My son bought his father-in-law a $90,000 truck. 3 days later, he stood in my trailer and told me he couldn't spare $18 for my heart medicine. I'm 61 years old. I spent 32 years on an assembly line building parts for tractors nobody thanked me for. My wife left when Derek was 8, walked out with a note on the table, and left me a boy to raise alone. I worked 14-hour days smelling like grease and metal so that boy would never know what it felt like to go without. I gave him everything I had, right down to an envelope of $4,000 in weathered overtime bills the day he graduated high school. Go be something, I told him. He did. He went to college, met a girl named Andrea whose family had real money, columns on the porch, a lawn that never browned. I drove my 15-year-old truck to their house once, duct tape on the mirror, parked between a Mercedes and a BMW, and I felt proud watching my son talk about stocks in a collared shirt. Andrea's parents, Carol and Robert, were polite to me, cold polite, the kind that looks right through the calluses on your hands and decides who you are. Slowly, Derek drifted. The Sunday calls got shorter, then stopped being about me at all. He started calling Robert Dad. I never said a word. I bit it down and smiled at family dinners where I felt like a ghost holding my granddaughter, Lily, the only thing that still made the ache in my chest feel worth it. Speaking of my chest, about a year ago it started aching for real. Cardiovascular trouble, the doctor called it. $18 a month kept it managed. 60 cents a day between me and a hospital bed. My pension check got delayed 1 week, and I was down to $23 with 3 pills left. I hadn't asked Derek for a dime since he graduated. But this was my heart, so I called. He picked up rushed, already halfway out the door to some client meeting. I asked for $18, told him I'd pay it back the second my check came. There was a long pause, and then a sigh like I'd asked him for a kidney. Dad, things are just so tight right now. Between the mortgage and Lily's school, I don't have spare cash. My family, he said, like I wasn't part of that word anymore. I told him I understood. I wasn't sure I did. I hung up, went to the bathroom, and looked at my last 3 pills. I cut them in half that night, against every warning my doctor ever gave me, just to stretch them 1 more week. 3 days later, I was scrolling Facebook on my cracked screen phone, and there it was, a brand new midnight blue pickup, chrome trim, massive tires, parked in front of a house I didn't recognize. The caption read that Derek had bought it for the best father-in-law in the world. People were praising his generosity in the comments. I did the math in my head. $90,000. He'd told me he couldn't find 18. I didn't call him. I didn't post anything bitter. I just sat in the dark with a kind of quiet that felt like drowning. I went to my pharmacist with my last $2 and begged for a few sample pills to get through the week. He gave them to me and told me I was a good man. My son clearly didn't think so. Then came the Thursday it rained sideways against my tin roof, and there was a knock at my door. It was Robert, soaking wet, no umbrella, holding a manila envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. He asked to come in. I'd never once had him in my trailer. He sat at my little table, looking around at the cracked counters, the pill bottles by the sink, and he told me something had been eating at him. Derek and Andrea, he said, were drowning. Credit card debt, a house they couldn't afford, and money Robert and Carol had quietly been feeding them for months. The truck wasn't a gift of gratitude. It was Derek trying to buy Robert's approval, and Robert had told him not to do it. Then his voice dropped. I didn't know about the phone call, he said. Derek told us the other day. He was bragging. He said he told his old man to get lost, that you're always mooching. Mooching. My own son used that word for a father who cut his own pills in half to survive. Robert said that was the moment something cracked open for him, and he'd gone digging. He pushed a stack of papers across my table. The truck's loan contract. $90,000 on paper, but the real number, with the interest Derek had signed on to out of desperation to impress his father-in-law, was closer to $130,000. My son had drowned himself in debt to buy a man's affection he already had, while telling his own father he had nothing to spare. But Robert wasn't finished. There was a second document. Andrea and Derek had told Robert and Carol that I'd secretly inherited money and given them a hidden down payment on their house, that I was sitting on cash and simply chose not to help. That was the story they'd used to explain away not helping me. A lie built on top of a lie, and I was the villain in both of them. I hadn't given them a cent. I'd never even seen their mortgage papers. Robert looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something other than pity in his eyes. Shame. He said he'd always thought I was the one holding Derek back. He said he was wrong. Then his gaze landed on the pill bottle on my counter, and I told him what it was, and that I couldn't afford to refill it. His face went pale. He didn't say anything. He just stood, pulled a thick stack of cash from the envelope, and put it in my hands. "That's not a gift," he said. "That's a down payment, because I'm going to need your help to make this right." Over the next hour he laid it out. He was transferring the truck loan into his own name to spare Derek from being buried by it, and he was going to sit the family down and expose everything. The lies about my inheritance, the mooching comment, all of it. He asked me to stand beside him when he did. A week later, at a diner, he showed me the paid-off loan documents. He'd also found out, almost by accident, that Derek was cheating on Andrea with a coworker. It was the final piece. We met at their house. Andrea and Carol were there. Derek smiled that easy, practiced smile when he saw me, like nothing was wrong. Robert didn't waste time. He laid out the debt, the lie about my inheritance, the affair, one after another, calm and merciless. Andrea didn't scream. She just went still and asked Derek if it was true. He tried to talk his way around it, turned to me for backup out of habit. I told him no, he didn't get to call me dad today. He'd had his chance to be my son, and he traded it for a truck. Robert told him to pack a bag. Andrea was keeping the house. I watched something collapse in my son's face that had nothing to do with losing his wife or his daughter. It was the house, the image, the status he couldn't afford, slipping away in real time. For the first time I saw him clearly, not a man crushed by circumstance, but a man who'd sold every real thing he had for a life that was never his to keep, and who'd pushed me aside because I reminded him of where he actually came from. Weeks passed. Derek lost his job when the affair and the debt came out. Andrea got full custody of Lily. My granddaughter started coming to my trailer every weekend, and now the fridge stayed full. Robert made sure of it, called it a salary for being his new partner, though we both knew it was something closer to family. One evening Derek showed up on my porch, unshaven, hollow-eyed, saying I'd been right, that he'd lost everything, that he needed me to forgive him. I didn't get up right away. I thought about the boy who used to sit on my lap and say he wanted to grow up just like me. Then I told him I didn't have money to give him, but I could give him the same thing I gave him as a boy. Be honest, work hard, and never take the people who love you for granted. He fell to his knees on my porch, begging. I stood up, walked inside, and closed the door. I didn't look back. The next day a package came from Robert. Inside was a photo of him, Carol, Andrea, and Lily on a boat, and behind them, a plain, paid-off second-hand truck for the farm. His note said they'd sold the $90,000 one and used part of the money to start a small college fund for Lily, not because they had to, but because she needed to learn the value of a dollar and of family. He told me I'd always be her grandfather, and that I was welcome any time. It's been a year now. Lily's in second grade. She draws me pictures and calls me Pops, and she has no idea about any of it. The money, the lies, the truck. She just knows I'm her grandfather. Derek is working 2 jobs, slowly paying off what's left of the debt that truck buried him in. He still calls on Sundays, but it's different now. No asking, no rushing, just talk about his day, the weather, Lily. I let him talk. I let him apologize. I haven't decided yet if I trust him again. What I learned this year is that love was never supposed to be a transaction, but that doesn't mean you owe someone your peace just because they share your blood. Sometimes you have to let people fall before they can learn to stand. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is close a door. My son bought his father-in-law a $90,000 truck and then told me he couldn't spare $18 for the medicine keeping my heart beating. It turned out to be the thing that finally showed me what I was actually worth, and it was never about the money. It was about which doors I was willing to close and which one I was willing to keep open for my granddaughter. The real revenge was never making him suffer. It was surviving in my own trailer, at peace, not because of him, but in spite of him. And that's worth more than any truck ever could be.